This is MIP. Get woke.
About 18 minutes before the hour. Joining us, folks, and we invite you to join us on our stream, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, Make It Plain. Joining us now in studio is Jennifer Jones Austin with her book, Consider It Pure Joy. Going to hear about her journey. First of all, welcome to Sirius XM and Make It Plain.
I'm excited, very excited to be here with you this morning. Excited to be with you.
Oh, well, bless your heart. Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you in person. We were just talking about her dad, the Reverend Dr. William Augustus Jones, with the voice, Bethany Baptist in Brooklyn. And the story I love to tell, you all have heard me talk about Reverend Sharon, my pastor's relationship with Reverend Jones. And one Sunday, Reverend, your dad came to preach in D.C., and he got up to preach. And, Reverend Sharon could sing. That was his thing. And your dad said, singing for a preacher is like a spare tire. When the sermon goes flat, you need that song to, bring that tire back up. And then your dad said, when I get to heaven, I plan on asking the good Lord why he didn't give me a spare tire like Reverend Sharon.
He knew how to tease his friends.
Yeah. No,
he loved him, though. He loved Reverend Sharon.
Yeah, no, we all love Reverend Jones. How are you?
I'm good. I am on a book tour, something I've never done before, but I'm excited about it. And I feel that it's an activity that has been ordained by God, because I wouldn't be here without him, given what I've been through.
You had a very rare illness, correct? Tell us about it.
So, try to do this quickly. I, back in September 2009, I woke up on a Friday morning with a flu-like fever and pushed through the day, came home, got in bed, sweating profusely through the night, drenched in my sweat, waking up, changing my PJs a few times. Saturday, I went to the ER, and they triaged me, told me that it looked like I had a run-of-the-mill virus. Go home, sleep it off, take some Advil, you'll be good. 2 days later, I woke up and I couldn't see, and then I knew it wasn't just a virus.
You couldn't see?
Could not see. Day later, doctor looked at me in the doctor's office. She said, I can't do anything for you. I need to send you via ambulance to the hospital. Went to the hospital, battery of tests. A day later, that Wednesday, the doctors came to my bedside and told my husband and me that I had acute myeloid leukemia. Told me that I would get chemotherapy and that should take care of it, put me in remission, and I'd be good for the rest of my life. That Thursday, my body began breaking down. The cancer, blood cancer, had entered my lungs, and it was spreading through my body. I couldn't breathe on my own. The doctors told my husband that it didn't look good. They intubated me. They put a tube down my throat to help me breathe, and then they put me in a coma because it didn't look good. By that Friday, 1 week from falling ill, that Friday, the doctors told my husband that I had a 99% chance of death. They told him that I would likely die that weekend. And so he brought my family in, my sisters, my brother, my mother, friends, family, and together they prayed. They prayed for me. The doctors did something else as well. They prayed, which is, unconventional. They prayed publicly and with my family. And believing that I had nothing to lose, they said, why don't we just try a cocktail of chemotherapy and see what might work? And lo and behold, it worked. And I came through. Praise God, I came through.
Indeed.
But then when I came through and I recovered from that coma, I was in the coma for about 10 days, we learned that the ordeal was far from over. I'd won the battle, but not the war. We learned that I had acute myeloid leukemia with a broken chromosome, an environmentally caused leukemia that caused the broken chromosome. Now, I was in 9/11. We will never know whether or not it was 9/11 and what I took in that day that caused it. But
Where
we
were
can't
you?
think of. I was actually down in Ground Zero, walking through the streets when the buildings fell.
Is that right?
The big towers fell. So we don't know. There's a greater incidence of people who were down in ground zero being afflicted with leukemia and other blood cancers. We don't know, but we can't dwell on that. We just got to keep moving forward. So they told me that with this broken chromosome, I needed a bone marrow transplant to cure me of the leukemia for the long term, because without that transplant, replacing my broken system, my broken blood and bone marrow system with a new bone marrow system, without it, the disease would likely return and take me out. And so that began an epic journey. All battles with cancer are epic, but this one was extraordinary in that it required us to go public with my disease and to ask the community, in particular the African American community, to step forward and to be considered as donors for me. Because when you need a bone marrow transplant, you're most likely to match with someone of the same race and ethnicity. And in that moment, when we turned to the registry, first we turned to my siblings.
Okay.
3 full-blooded siblings, same mom and dad. They were tested. They matched each other, but they didn't match me.
Wow. Is that right?
So then we turned to the registry, 8 million people. And the doctors combed that registry and didn't find one match for me. And that's when we learned that the number of people of African descent in that registry is relatively small. And so it decreases your chances of finding a donor. And let's add to that, that because of the great African diaspora that we can get into, but because our bloodline has been so thinned through the years, slavery and displacement across this world, it is very hard to find someone of the same genetic typing when you are African American. So my chances were smaller and smaller and smaller. My husband inquired about us doing bone marrow drives across the nation where people come and they register to be considered as a donor. And the doctors told him, don't waste your time. It's most unlikely that you'll get a match, because at best maybe you'll bring 100, maybe 200 people to the drives. They didn't know my husband. They didn't know my family. They didn't know my friends. They didn't know the community of churchgoers who heard that Bill Jones's daughter was in trouble, and they stepped up. And so we commenced these drives, and in 13 weeks, 13,000 people were added to the registry, mainly people of African descent, to be a donor for me, whose life hung in the balance, but also to be a donor for other people who also needed transplants. Can I tell you that in the years since we did that, nearly 100 people have received donors, bone marrow transplants, from people who came forward because they heard I was in trouble.
Heard you needed. Wow.
But here's the interesting thing. I didn't get a match from that effort.
Still didn't get a match.
Still didn't get a match. And I know that's because God had something very special for me. So I've written this book, Consider It Pure Joy, to tell that journey, to tell that story, to tell the story of how in the midst of that challenge, those great dark moments, those moments of despair and uncertainty, when my life hung in the balance, when I was preparing to die because, truth be told, death looked more certain than life, how I was able to find peace and comfort and joy because I knew that God was walking with me. Consider pure joy is taken from the book of James. Consider pure joy when you face trials and tribulations, because the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its course so that you may be more mature and complete, lacking nothing. So the book is for anybody experiencing crisis, whether it be serious illness, whether it be loss of a loved one, loss of something precious to you, reputation, job, whatever it may be, crisis with your child, whatever. It's about walking through that valley and trying to find comfort and peace and positivity, trying to find purpose in your suffering.
And fearing no evil.
And fear no evil.
You walk through the valley of the shadow of death. So whatever happened with the transplant? Did you ever find a match?
So about 25 years ago, I was in law school, and I was pursuing a career in corporate law. And one day, I learned the story of a young man who'd killed his father and was tried and convicted. But at sentencing, the judge found that he had suffered so much emotional, physical, and mental abuse at the hands of his father that rather than putting him in prison, She wanted him to get help for his mental illness that had resulted from the years of trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Sure.
And from that, I felt like all of a sudden God had shown me that my life was to be about helping his most vulnerable children. And so I have been able to, because of, in my belief, my thinking, my response to God's calling on my life, working now for better than 24 years to take care of his most vulnerable children and families, doing poverty work. I run a nonprofit anti-poverty policy and advocacy organization. God allowed me to take care of the children, his most vulnerable children. Well, I don't want to give it all away, but what I will tell you is that when my family couldn't help me by being transplant donors, when the 8 million people in the registry couldn't do it, when 13,000 people who came forward to help me couldn't do it, God sent something very special for me. And I believe that it's because, in part, he saw that I was trying to help his children. He stepped up to help me. He sent the kids to help me.
Wow.
So you got to read about it in the book.
We should mention that she is a CEO of the Federation of Protestant Welfare Agencies, leading poverty fighting policy and advocacy efforts to strengthen and empower our disenfranchised and marginalized community, doing very, very important work. You said you prepared for death because it was more of a certainty. How does one prepare for that?
So I knew that at the end of the day, God has the last say. He has the last word.
Certainly.
No matter what the doctors say, God has the last word. But I was in a very dangerous situation. My body was shutting down. I knew that God's will would be ultimate, and I had to be at peace with that. It may not have been what I wanted, but I had to be at peace with that. So I would pray that that God would allow me to live, but if he didn't, that he would help me get my house in order. And what that looked like was writing letters to my children, preparing them for a life without me, seeking to tell them the things that when they were in trouble and in crisis, they would turn to. I wrote them letters, better than 50 letters. Some of them are in the book, letting them know what I thought about success, what I thought about friendship, what I thought about education, what I thought about family, what I thought about religion, what I thought about community, what I thought about being black, so that if I was gone, then they could turn to those letters and piece together something that would help them think, well, this is maybe what mommy would have thought about this or about that. I got my house in order. I did my trust and my will, and I made sure that the children were to receive therapy until such a time as another therapist, the second therapist, told my husband that they were good to go. I talked to my husband about death. But the other thing that I did was I held close to God. My daddy used to preach. We talked about my dad a little while ago. He used to preach about the storms of life. He would say that everybody goes through storms. You're either in a storm, coming out of one, or about to go through one. And so I knew before I got sick that my storm was going to come, no matter how good my days were. I knew that my storm was going to come. I didn't know what it would be, but I would pray to God that when it came, that I would be able to face it with a smile, that I would embrace the journey, no matter the outcome. And so I'd been praying up, and I'd been trying to stay close to God. And what I learned from this experience is that when you are going through those darkest moments of despair, that's when you get closer to God. Someone said to me after I came through this, a cousin of mine, he said, "You must feel like you've been given a second chance." And I instantly replied, "Not really. It feels more like a promotion because I was moved to a level where I hadn't been. I had to go down, way down, to come up high, really, really high."
Jennifer Jones Austin, her book, Consider It Pure Joy, and it's a lesson to all of us as we go, as her father would say, as we go through the storms of life, how we can get through those storms, how we can overcome them. All of us do that, go through that to some extent. And it's always good to hear a story about how we can get through it and overcome it. And most of us have never experienced and may never experience the kind of storm that Jennifer had to go through. And we praise God that she came through it and is an example for all of us and continuing to do great, great work on behalf of the community and sharing this lesson for us all. That's a ministry unto itself.
Amen. You know what they say, there's no testimony without a test. And if God gives you an experience for you to grow from it, others can grow from it too. So I think I'm doing the work I'm supposed to be doing. One of the things that I learned about this too is the community responded to me. And that actually has reinvigorated my quest to work on behalf of vulnerable people in this nation. Because if the community could step up for me, we should be stepping up for all of our children, for all of God's children who are struggling every day.
No, that's real. Throughout that ordeal, you heard your father's voice?
Oh, he was speaking to me in ways that I never would have imagined. There's a story in the book. They tell me it reads like a novel. When I was working with the editors, they kept saying, this didn't happen. This didn't. I said, yes, it did. Yes, it did. But there was a moment in my journey when I thought I was nearing death. I thought I was coming very close to it. And I was ready because I started fantasizing if what they say is true, that you get to go to heaven and see those who've gone on before you. So I started getting happy. I was going to go spend some time with Daddy. And I fell asleep. And in my sleep, God sent the one who, the only one who could tell me it wasn't my time. He sent my daddy. It's a very interesting story how that went down. He came to me and he wouldn't look at me. He was right there, but he wouldn't look at me. And I kept calling to him and he wouldn't look at me. And then I woke up and I thought, it's not your time.
Wow. What a story. Book available everywhere?
It's on Amazon. Grab it. Consider it pure joy.
As I said, folks, if you've been through something, going through something, or as Reverend Jones would say, you may be about to go through something, whether you want to be in, and it's always something. It might be the littlest thing or the biggest thing. People, when they say, I've heard people say when they've been put into comas, that they experience different things in that process. What about you? Do you remember anything? Was anything going on?
I don't remember anything. What I can tell you is when I woke up, my birthday had passed.
Okay.
And so my sister started bringing me current, and she was telling me, it's been your birthday. People have brought you flowers. Not flowers. They brought you balloons. They brought you cards. She's going on and on. And I said to her, this is not about me. And she looked at me and she said, no, honey, they came for you. And I said, this is bigger than me. Somehow I knew that if I was suffering, it was for a purpose greater than me. And God proved that with the drives, with other people receiving transplants as a result of my illness. It was bigger than me.
Consider it pure joy. Jennifer Jones Austin, available everywhere. Glad she's a morning person too. I always appreciate people, especially when people take time to come in early in the morning, because I'm on at the crack of dawn, and so we appreciate that. Pleasure to finally get to share with you. I've seen you 1,000 times at different programs and whatnot, but we've never had a chance to really interact. And most recently at the NAN convention, saw you and your mom there. And so God bless your mother and your family.
Thank you. You've made my day. You've made my week.
Oh, bless your
Maybe
heart.
my month.
Jennifer, thank you. Well, you've made ours as well and made mine. Thank you for coming in. Consider it pure joy, folks.
Thank
Jennifer
you.
Jones Austin. You all can share this video with everybody on your own social media to hear this story and to tell this story. This won't be the last. We had to have you back in and talk about the anti-poverty work you're doing.
Let's do it.
And how people can get involved. You have a website?
I do. My website, my own website is jenniferjonesaustin.com, and FPWA, the Federation of Protestant Welfare Agencies website, where you can learn all about the anti-poverty work that we're doing, the city, state, and federal level, is www.fpwa.org.
All right, wonderful. Consider It Pure Joy by Jennifer Jones Austin. One more time, folks, check it out. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we'll be back on the radio in a few minutes. Sirius XM Progress 127, Resistance Radio. Get woke, get ready for impeachment. This is MIP.